Okay, peoples, I'm excited about this. I got a lot of stuff for you. This could go, it's hard to tell, 35, 40 minutes. So if you want to just push through or save the video or something or go back to it, you don't have to watch the whole thing. But I'm going to depart a bunch of knowledge about gold mining, silver mining, the sector, not the mining process, but the sector, how these stocks work, why they're going to do so well over the next, period of time, multiple years, and at times with YILEDMAX on Tuesday, May 21st, launching GDXY. GDX is a common mid-tier to larger cap gold miners and some silver miners. And so that's an index. It has a lot of options, a lot of liquidity, and it's massively undervalued, even relative to the high gold and silver prices. So I can see why they've launched it, and it should do really, really well. So I recommend you guys that listen to this, go out there and get some GDXY when it launches. I know Pat, Paul, several of you have expressed interest, probably Mike G. So anyway, love you guys, all my subscribers, and it's growing. I'm having a lot of fun, and this topic I just love. Okay. So I did a little bit of work for you guys, labor of love. So I went out and identified the 10 top holdings of GDX so you guys can get a feel for it. And I have some I like more than others, but initially, let me just say, let's take the ETF route on the income. Remember, these YILEDMAX funds are income oriented first, right? You can always do better on GDX by buying options directly yourself because it's reasonably priced. If you're authorized at your retail trading firm to be able to do options, I plan to share all of those things. But if you want income, good income, then let YILEDMAX run this for you and do that. If you also want to buy a few individual selections, I can start to tell you which ones I like better than others, right? Because an index gives you somewhat of a safety. And frankly, from a liquidity where YILEDMAX can go out and put hundreds and thousands of option trades on, they need a very liquid fund. So GDX gives them that, right? So of these 10 gold stocks, they're ranked by their weighting. So I put this in a Excel table so I can go sort it on any field I want. I can go sort it on price, I can sort it. So let's go through this. That's why this video is going to be a little longer. I got a lot of charts to show you and take you through I want you guys set up to where you don't try and trade in and out of GDXY, but maybe I'll tell you, hey, for the next 2 months, GDX is not going to do well. So if you want to go out and buy a bear GDX type ETF, right, that you don't have to short, you just go out and buy something called dust, right? And that's like 2 times the inverse of, and I'll take you through some of these scenarios. And then you kind of protect what you might lose in NAV, because remember, you're still going to get income. If GDX is going down, right, then you're still going to get income from YILEDMAX. It's just you want to make up that NAV loss, right? Instead of trying to trade in and trade out and miss dividends and all that kind of stuff. I mean, because I really know this sector well. It allowed me to retire in 2009 because for 9 years after the dot-com burst, I was in high tech, my stock value was going, I was a senior manager level in a big tech company, one of the 4 horsemen of that 90s decade, made a lot of money working, made a lot of money in stock value, and options, and then turned around and lost a considerable amount after the 2000 debacle, right? And then I said, what's going to happen in the next decade? And I sort of discovered gold and silver and commodities. And we're sort of in a similar situation now where commodities are going to perform well as we have a stagflation and high debt and other things. So anyway, let me get back to the core thing. So Newmont Holdings, right now I own some calls on Newmont out for September. And I've been in them for 2 or 3 weeks, right? Because I believe, how does this, that it's super undervalued? So let me explain the concept to you. Some of you older people who are very familiar with the sector know this. For some of you others, this is going to be an education. So skip forward if you know this. So some simple concepts to understand mining, okay? The industry uses something, typically there's some cash costs, but most of the time they call it all-in sustaining cost, ASISC. So take a gold miner, a silver miner, a miner of anything, okay? And let's understand something. What's their cost of operation? I mean, forget G&A and administrative. The bulk of their input costs are labor, people driving heavy machinery, and diesel, right? So they're energy and labor intensive for a mine. And let's say you know what that cost is, and let's say that your AISC, okay, is 1,300, and clearly some gold mining, that's a good number in today's world. It's $1,300 an ounce. So you figure out all your costs and you say it's $13 an ounce, okay? So gold is trading at 2,400, right? 24, 21, something like that. And there's futures prices, there's the daily spot price. So let's not, deviate too much or which one I'm using. It doesn't matter. I'll just go out with what I see as spot around 24, 21. So you take somebody like Newmont, and the analysts were rating them to say, okay, they're neutral to a buy. Well, they're looking in the rearview mirror. Newmont purposely in the first quarter held back on their high-grade gold because they knew gold was going up, right? They're very close to the gold market. They knew it's likely to go to 2,600 into the second quarter. So they really turned up the crank for the second quarter to produce. So they're going to have an average sell price of $2,400 to $2,500. And on 1,300, when you think about that, right? It wasn't long ago that they were selling gold for 1,500. So when you're selling gold at 1,500, you've got $200 profit, right? So what happens when the gold price goes to 1,800, right? Well, maybe your energy price went up 3%, but you could almost look at it, let's say it didn't. So I got a $200 an ounce profit, right? And that translates into the millions that mining company reports as earnings, right? Across their shares. So let's say they're earning $2 on $200 an ounce profit. Well, when they go to 1,800, they've got now $500 an ounce profit. Right? Now, if your oil price goes up or, your labor price goes up 5%, 3%, energy can go up 10%. Well, what happens when gold's at 2,000, right? What happens when gold's at 2,500, right? I gave you this 2,000 number. All of a sudden, it's $1,000 an ounce is your profit. So at $200 an ounce, you were making $2 in earnings. At $1,000 an ounce, right, you're making $10 an ounce, 5 times that. So any company that has a 20 or 30% improvement quarter over quarter, year over year, and their earnings typically, look at NVIDIA, right? I keep thinking of the fund for YILEDMAX. I mean, they had, margins got up to be 70 or 80%, right? Well, they're not doing 5 times earnings always. So anyway, it's something here that only commodity-based players can double or triple. If I told you I'm Kraft and I make cheese and everybody wants cheese, and there's a shortage, then prices can go up a lot. But there's a certain amount. People are going to say, well, I'm not going to buy cheese, right? It's too high. I'm going to buy crackers, or I'm going to buy eggs, or I'm going to get something else. There's substitutes, right? But sometimes in silver, over 50% of silver is utilized by industry. So there's not a lot of alternatives in electronics and healthcare and solar. When you build a Tomahawk missile, it uses 500 ounces of silver. So you don't have a lot of choices, right? Not that Tomahawk missile has that much to do with it, but clearly, if you've ever seen us in a war cycle, the world is in a war cycle right now. So they're building a lot of Tomahawks and continue to staff those. That's not talked about a lot, right, from a silver standpoint. But anyway, without the last thing I want to do is talk politics, but I can mention geopolitical, because what drives up the price of gold? Well, there's a fear trade, right? War, fear trade, inflation, and a big thing is lack of trust in the government. When gold tends to move, it smells out debt, it smells out government printing money, it smells out a lot of things, and they can suppress it, silver temporarily and gold, and they prefer you stay in fiat and all that, but that's a declining asset, right? That's why BTC has been doing so well, because it's a store of value. Well, gold's also a store of value, right? So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on why these stocks likely can justify going up 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Now, a major, it's harder when you take a Newmont, one of the largest gold companies in the world, them and Barrick Gold. It's hard for them to go up 5 times, but I honestly suspect it's very likely in the next 5 years you could see Newmont go up 5 times. Now, given that environment, I don't do meme coins. I don't really own anything except for BTC and some of the, but I don't own any meme coins. I don't really do crypto other than BTC, and typically I do through other assets that own BTC. But anyway, in gold, you can find companies that are going to go up 500 times, but it's so difficult to find them, right? I used to say, well, I'm going to buy a bunch of little silver juniors, and one of them is going to go up 100 times, and I don't care if the other 9, I lose everything, right? And I equally distribute, but the reality is so difficult, and you don't know when they're going to run. So I just give you my wisdom here. I think it's great that GDX is going to get utilized. I like Newmont a lot, believe it or not. I love AEM, Agnico Eagle Miners. They do more silver, they do a lot. Nobody anymore is a pure silver play with nothing else. You really can't mine silver without mining some gold, some copper. And some of the big gold guys do a substantial amount of silver just because they mine so many ounces of everything, right? And some of these guys are, they have a trouble at 1 or 2 mines, and some own mines in Africa. But all these big guys are pretty substantial. They're not going to go out of business. I love Wheaton, right? I love Franco-Nevada. These first 5 guys I really like. Barrick, so look at some of them, though, on the 3-month gains, and this is fitting that Agnico is one of the best performers over the last 3 months. Here's the last year, right? Look at the IV. It's fairly calm. You don't see any 90s and 70s. Now, there's a couple of holdings in here I put in yellow. And the reason this is the top 10, which represents 60%, okay, of the GDX. So that's what you care about the most. These are the bigger guys. So this one is a Chinese firm. I don't know. I didn't really research where they mine. I think they mine in Australia. They mine in China. So the symbol that you show it hardly has any trading on it. It's traded up in Canada. It's traded in China. It's traded in Hong Kong. And this is a big Australian that's primarily traded on the Australian exchange. There's a symbol for it in the US, but it's a dinky little symbol, right? And what I mean is there's not many shares trading, so the liquidity is in other markets. But remember, something like GDX, they can go buy them in the other markets. You and I, as a retail trader, it's not as easy, right? So I don't personally like having to buy small, illiquid OTC stocks with 5 letters, right? But this has been a stellar performer, right? $49.99, 65% 3-month gain, 69%, 52-week gain. So it looks, and then there wasn't IVs for these because I don't believe these have any option market. If they do, the option market's going to be over in those other countries. So another reason why you at this point you're never going to see YILEDMAX go pick one of these little guys and have it be a single stock fund. They could pick a Newmont or an AEM or a Barrick, but right now they're using an index, which I think is smart, right? So you're not as likely to go up 15% in a single day like you can in MSTR or coin or something, or NVIDIA in an underlying, right? So this is a good way for them to play this right now. I love GFI out of South Africa. I also like Harmony. Harmony's not, they're probably further down this list, but they're one of the best performing gold stocks also. So let's do this 3-month gain and see what comes up again. Let's go largest to smallest. Look at Kinross, right? They've been around a long time. They're smaller than some of these other guys. 51% for the year, 57% for the last 3 months. So they've started surging. People are buying into it, right? Now, we won't get any of the dividends that these companies pay. And quite honestly, they're low. Nobody buys, well, I shouldn't say nobody. Some people go out, love gold mining, they'll buy a Barrick, they'll buy a Newmont, knowing that over time it's going to do okay, and they'll take their 3 or 4% yield. But most people aren't going to buy this, especially you YILEDMAX people like me and most of you that follow my channel. So you can see that some of these companies aren't. Barrick's probably a decent buy. They had some operational issues, but they're massive. Part of the problem is these big giant companies like Barrick and Newmont, they bought so many other companies that everything's in a state of flux from one quarter to the next. They got to mine, they're retrofitting and get it operational. So you have some things. Again, I think the basket of funds is a good idea. Okay? So let's move through. I won't beat this to death. If you guys have questions in the comments, hit me up. I can sort this for you. I can help you. I really, really have a lot of knowledge from the 10 years that I traded this, worked it, and still invest in it, right? As I said to you, I've had several trades with Newmont this year. Let me share with you some up and coming things, okay? And let me show you in my gold charts. Then remind me to come back to, well, we're not live. Let me go through it this way. So here's some silver, right? These are more silver focused companies. So I don't want anybody to say I didn't give you anything, right, in this. So here's some silver players that I like, even though Anico does a lot up above. Is probably them, Ashanti Gold. Look at this, 3-month gains for it. I think Ashanti Gold right now, AU, is probably chart set up the best of any big gold mining stock there is right now. I love their chart. Okay, these more pure silvers with their symbols. I love all these, right? This one's been known as boring, Hecla mining, right? And a lot of times it is, and so does CE. But I tell you, when silver gets going, they will perform. What about ETFs? Well, I'm going to give you a chart on SILJ, and these things fly. Silver tends to be late in the gold cycle. If you look at the 2000 run, 2001 to 2011, and we had that big crash in 2009, late 2008, the Bear Stearns and all the other stuff. And then it got going again. Silver got cut in half from $1,000 down to from 1,000 to 700. Silver got cut from like, $20, $23 back to like $8. And the miners got 90% cuts. They just got crushed. And then they turned around and rallied from 2009 to 2011, and silver went to $50. And it was a blow off top. I mean, it still hasn't hit a high. Gold's hit new all-time highs, and silver just broke 30, which is a big breakout on Friday. So we're going to do well. All right, so here's a couple of ETFs. I'll show you some charts. Over in the just general and gold and silver for miners, if you're also playing, let's say we're doing GDX and it runs, 11%, and you see it and our underlying gets capped, right, from an income fund, that's when you want to own some Nugget. I mean, you can go out and own GDX, but Nugget is a 2-time. Let me show you some of this stuff on the chart, okay? So let's look what happened on Friday, right? Let's go look at GDX. I love this education stuff. Hopefully this helps you guys. Okay, so what did GDX go up? 3.39, right? So up $1.21, 3.39%, right? So what did Nugget go up? Which is a 2-times, right? 6.7. So it would have been 6.78 if it was a perfect 2-times, right? But you get the idea. Well, what if you were bearish? You thought GDX topped, and now you're going to get some income in your YILEDMAX, but you feel like covering yourself. Well, dust is the inverse. Whoops, where did I? So let's go with dust here. Sorry, sometimes I get so excited. My voice gets so many octaves higher. Look at this. It was down 6.93, right? So that's what you would expect, right? No, they'll what do you call it? They'll inverse split this, because where GDX is going near term is going to cause them to have a need to do that. Okay, so you get the idea of where I'm going. Now, if you want to play juniors, and juniors are late in the cycle, but honestly, we only may run till the first week of June here, and I'll give you some targets for GDX, then have a pullback, although one of the models I'm working on has us topping at the beginning of June, maybe into the first week, then pulling back the rest of June, and then running in July till mid-August, and then really pulling back. So I'll try and keep you guys abreast of it, but I really am, pretty close with what the trends are here. So anyway, there's a JNUG, right? We talked about Nugget, but JNUG is the 2-times bullish, right? It went up 9%. Why? Because the smaller stocks went up more. So, and J Dust would have lost 9%, right? So there's times that, yeah, they lost 9%. Okay, so just hit me up with questions. I'm going to make this a regular part. I'll keep these tabs, and then when I do all my GDX options, I'll have all this stuff in here that if somebody sends me a message, I'll make sure I cover the next one. All right, so the other thing to know, why we think the miners are so undervalued, long-term gold people and aware of the market. When we get going, it's not untypical for the miners to trade 4 to 1, and some of them much higher at times relative to gold. So if gold goes up 2%, your average miner that produces gold will probably go up 8%, right? And I mean, I honestly can remember in the good times, and all the gold price is all relative. Let's say gold was only 1,200 and it goes up $50 and you go, oh my gosh, gold's way up. And then you look and you say, wow, GDX is up 11%. Well, Nugget is up 22%, right? And so all of a sudden you just get, you know, like the FOMO that was in AI when some of those companies fly. So these things happen. Another thing, silver and platinum will massively outperform gold going forward. The gold miners will do great. So somebody asked me, I think it was Paul, says, hey Bruce, you're going to give us stuff on gold and silver. You got any advanced things? So it was funny, that day I was buying PLG. It was like $1.60 I bought PLG. It's a platinum-based group of miners, right? I think it's 175 now is where it ended up. So I hope you got some of that, Paul. Oh, it's 188. Yeah, that was a terrible pick of mine, wasn't it? Yeah, look at this, guys. Look at this. I bought it at 160. And I told Paul, and so it's, I didn't even, you know, when I was looking at my Newmont options and, you know, all the funds were doing well. And I had a heck of a day on Friday, a great update, all-time new highs. These are some other ones. I've owned this one, honestly, for about a year and a half, and it hasn't done well. SBSW, right? It's done terrible. It pays a dividend, but I know as a U.S.-based and South African, it's gonna kick butt, right? So when you go and you look at a 5-year chart, right, there's a lot of mining stocks that the last high was 2020. Well, it's because platinum's been crushed. So that's the upside I see in another year, year and a half. I mean, it could happen in 6 months that we triple in SBSW. I mean, these are the kinds of things that can happen. Now, I know we want to do YILEDMAX and we want to do the fund, and we are. If you don't care about this stuff, then skip through it. But just know that I'm trying to do this broad enough to bring in some other people too. And tell anybody you know that likes precious metals and likes miners, and I've got a lot to share. Okay, IMPU is a smaller, it's my, out of these three, it's the third one. There aren't that many pure platinum players, and I really don't like just the physical metal stocks. I mean, I own a crap full of silver. I've got 4 monster boxes, right? Like 2,000 silver eagle ounces. I've got, you know, a couple hundred gold eagles, the 1 ounces. So, and some pandas. So I've been in physical for a long time after that last crash going, you know, in 2011 in the metals. But I've played the miners and been frustrated many times with them. Like a lot of people. I mean, they're just so undervalued, right? And it's hard when you got all this FOMO and all this stuff in the NASDAQ and AI. And look, I worked in that industry. I understand it, you know? So let me show you another chart here. While I tried to organize all this stuff. Here's a nice chart of somebody that I follow on X. And they posted this. Now, this is actually about 10 days old, right? What the trading day was, well, it's not that, May 4th or something. And this was part of their projected, what they call a right translated, you know, former high, then a low, and then here. And look how accurate this almost is. This leads into June. And I can tell you some of my personal targets, because what happens is this flies up here in the MACD and some of the other things, and so it cuts off the price up here. But let me give you some targets on what I think, okay, for gold. And remember, what gold does is when the miners have woken up, and they've woken up, they're going to start following gold, and they're going to start performing, right? And what will happen is when we have a downturn in the overall stock market, they'll go down along with all the high FOMO and all the other stocks. It could be a 3 or 4 month bear cycle. And then when the market starts back up, they'll way outperform everything else. And that's what you're looking at. So on gold, the next target is 2470. Then I see 2570 to 2580. There should be resistance there. Then 2650. That could be a top and should be a consolidation area. And it's feasible for, and I'm talking June, okay? We could go on up to 2740, okay? So what's that going to do for GDX? Probably, we're already 30, let me do my GDX. Oh, I got a great GDX chart for you guys. You're going to love it, especially those that know my Misty and Coney. Here's one of my other models, and I'm torn between these because I belong to a Slack group, and I've got some really, really bright people in there that are long-term gold bugs, and one guy was a professional options trader for 20-something years, and then he's been trading on his own for 12 or 15, one of the brightest guys I know. And he bounced some things off me and built this little model for gold some time ago and said, he sees it, in June. This is up into the June where we're going to start to run, and then a little sideways. Remember, we got FOMC on June 11th and 12th. Some people are calling that the next top, and we only run with gold and gold miners there and then pull back for, a month and then go. We don't, and he doesn't really have that. He has it going to around August 15th. We dip, kind of have a double top, and then have a pretty, a 20% pullback or something on gold, which will affect the miners, and the chart's going to mimic into October, and then we should start moving back up to all new highs and everything into 2025. So don't think that these don't have pullbacks, because they do. So here is what I built for you guys. This is the classic inverse head and shoulder, right? Now remember, I was saying sometimes they have a slanted. This is a case of a slanted, but I just drew 2 lines here, right, to give you possible necklines. This easily is a neckline, but then it's got another because on this side. So this measures, and the way you measure a neckline is you take the bottom of the head, you pick a neckline. Let's take 32 and 26. Well, that measures up to 38. And you can see that we're heading there. If you take the 26 and you use, a little over 30, we got a little more than 4. So 30 and a half and 4 puts us around 34 and a half. Well, look where we consolidated it over here, right? So then we formed a bull flag. It broke out of there, and once it moves above 36, I've got 38 to 42.30 as the next likely sell-off. And there's no guarantee that it sells off there, and there's no guarantee that it goes to 42.30, but there's very strong probability. So that gives you some idea over the next 2 to 3 weeks on what we could do. Okay, so get in that GDX fund, or get into the G, and by the way, it's GDXY for those that weren't listening before. GDXY is the name of the YILEDMAX single stock bullish fund for GDX with the underline. So we're also breaking on a MACD, right? This is our volume. You can see that I should have drawn a line on the volume. Clearly that's a breakout on the volume on Friday. So we're also pulling up on the MACD. So look at this. This is some more. So right now, what happens periodically in gold bull cycles, right? From the last one I really played was this 2001, right? Where it was $35 in the Dow to an ounce of gold. And we traded at the 011, to maybe $6 or something. So we're not as high now. We could go to 1. It's been 1 before, I think in 1980. Well, think about that. So that price would make the miners be valued 15 to 20 times higher. And maybe it's over here, it's probably in 2028, 2027, 2029. Nobody knows exactly when. It takes some time. But my overall belief is that commodities seriously outperform. I don't even know what the Dow is right now. 40 something? Yeah, it's 40, right? So I could see the Dow getting to 45, maybe 50, but I'm talking 6 or 7 years. Well, what is that? That's a 25% gain, so that's like averaging 3 to 4%. I see these commodities averaging 15 to 25% a year. Depends on which stock you're in. So you run through cycles like that, right? And it's sectors. So when people ask me all the time, do you cover NVIDIA? Not that I don't cover those, but I believe the FOMO is overhyped, and I think we're due for a big correction, 20% or so. And it may, and honestly, some of these big FOMO players could go down 50, 60%. And then maybe in the next up cycle, 4 or 5 years out, in AI, they go up and double and triple again. I'm never one to do. It's just like Tesla. I don't see much upside short term in Tesla. I mean, maybe it pops another 5 or 10 or 15%, but I also think Tesla, revisits 100 again. Could go down to 80. So, but eventually, I think they get their act together, and they are the computer on wheels, right? That solve a lot of problems. But they've drawn in a lot of competition, just like NVIDIA in the AI side. Microsoft is now switching to AMD for their high-end chips. And that's margin erosion ultimately on NVIDIA. It's hard to stay at the top and when you're priced to perfection. Here's another one. These kinds of things I just love. Okay? So this one is saying GDX to gold. Anybody and everybody hates that gold stocks. They start to give up on them. They start buying NVIDIA, and they start buying Microsoft, and they start buying SMCI, and hopefully they're not buying GameStop and that kind of stuff. But people get tired of when they don't perform. Well, this is a 5-year chart. Look at the one on the bottom. This goes a lot further back. This goes back to the last high. So this is the common ratio of, like 0.7 or something here. Well, we're down in the 0.22 neighborhood. So there's more than a triple to get back up. So some of these miners are just going to roar through that, right? So, I mean, this is just, there's no price to perfection here. It's just the opposite. Okay, so let me jump into silver again. Let me make sure that what else I wanted to show you over here. Okay. Let's go to the silver charts. I know this is long for some of you. So this is where we are in silver. Remember I said, so this is the last run up, right, in 2011 to $50. We were $50 back with the Hunt brothers in January of 1980, where they literally, the futures market had to change the rules. All of a sudden the futures market, because the Hunt brothers were going to capture all the silver, and it was already going nuts, and they came out and said, okay, we got a new rule. You cannot buy, you can only sell. The market's closed for buying, but the market's open for selling only. And so silver just, within a week or two, it was like 20 bucks from 50 bucks. And the Hunt brothers lost billions way back in those days, right? They didn't like their tactics to get all that silver, and they weren't going to let it happen. So don't ever think that markets aren't rigged sometimes. I mean, I'm not a guy that thinks things aren't going up because, suppression, although it does happen at times. Here's another thing on silver saying every time silver breaks out, this 7-year rate of change, when we go through that, it needs to be above this lower line. And when it does, it runs multiples, right? And I got another chart that shows you where it went to, right? Now this one I kind of remember because I played silver in the stocks. It started out around $3 or $4 in that 2001 range, right? So think about that. That was like 11 times, right? $4 to $50. And I don't even know where it was in this scenario, right? I know gold was locked at 35 and it went to like 870. So these things are massive, and I love cups and handles. I'm a chart guy, as you guys may have detected, so I've showed you a lot of inverse head and shoulders. And so this is a cup, and this is the handle. And the more years involved in something, the higher and further the breakout leads to. I mean, heck, look at the handle. The handle's running all the way in this time frame. And look at, everybody was saying we need to break 30. We need to break 30. We need to break 30. Well, if we broke 30 substantially on Friday, but every time we had tried it before, we kissed it for the day and then closed back down. So I think we need one more day on Monday to stay above 30, okay? And then I think we do, here's my numbers for silver. I think silver runs to 34 to 36 before the early part of June, and we get the pause and pullback. Now maybe it only goes back to 30, the scene of the crime. So I could easily see it running up to 36, coming back and testing 30, consolidating, and then moving up. Again, I'm trying to figure out if this is a 2.5 month run, right? If we go up to the 1st of June, pull back for 2, 3, 4 weeks, and then run for 2 months before we have a bigger pullback, or we simply run all the way through June and then pull back in July or August. So those are the fine tuning that I'm looking for some signals. Wow, I'm getting long in the tooth. Here's SILJ, right? So what that chart is showing you is a resistance line. And that could time perfect, right? Because when you look at SILJ, it was up 529, right? On Friday, 5.29%, right? So I see on that guy 1481. I think it's we're pretty locked in to get to 1481, maybe 15. And then we could some resistance. And that was the previous high in 2022, right? So right about here. It could be the peak, could be a little over that. Call it 15. That's even looking like it's higher than 15, but call it 15. I think we go there. And then we could get consolidation. Well, what is that? That's really a cup, and then the consolidation becomes our handle, right? So maybe we get this first week of June, we get a month consolidation, and then we really fly up, and then we get a point, and this is true for everything in gold. And also, we could get BTC to do this, we could get NASDAQ FOMO, right, for another month or so. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen to many things. I just know the miners are going to sustain this over multiple years. And I don't see the Dow, I don't see the NASDAQ getting anywhere near that, right? They're as close to all-time highs for probably the next year or two. And then, and then they're going to trade up. And what happens on these indexes is you'll start to see at the peak of gold and silver in 5 years from now, they'll probably be 30% or 25% of the S&P 500. Right? So that's what happens. These indexes move over and grab the hot sector. I'm just trying to steer you guys into the hot sector, right? I was going to do this even if there wasn't a GDX. It just so happens that GDX is coming for YILEDMAX, so it makes my life a lot easier. I'm not going to get out of the BTC I own because all these assets are stores of value, and troubled times with our government and paper printing and wars and all the neocon kinds of things that create havoc in the world. Okay, I think I'm almost done. Let's see what else is in here. Oh, look at this. This is silver, physical silver on TradingView. And look at this. It's really, saying when this thing goes. Now, they're showing 60. Is that all going to happen in 3 weeks? Nah. We're probably going to go up, right, at 36. We might come over here a little bit for 2 or 3 weeks and consolidate. We could run to 42. It's so hard to know exactly, right? But I imagine by the end of the year, we will. It's very possible in gold, the calendar end of the year, that we've hit 3,000 sometime during the year. I think we get to 26 or 27, and because I gave you those as my goal numbers near term, right? I think silver, it's very likely we get to $50 this year. So if you don't own some of these, so it's not just YILEDMAX dividend only, right? I want you guys to get in some more stuff, and I'll create a trading service. I'll create something for you that I can do. So anyway, I've gone way over. Platinum, look at this. The reason these things are going to outperform is silver hasn't hit new highs. Look at this. Look at platinum on a linear monthly. It's so grossly undervalued. The other thing I was going to tell you is silver gets consumed. I mean, you talk about, look at this. And those of you that have to go or not listening, that's fine. So let's talk about in 2000s. All the gold that's ever been mined, okay, in the history of the world would fit in an Olympic swimming pool. You just took the water out of the Olympic swimming pool and you put all the gold that's ever mined, it would fit in there. So gold's still around, it's still there, right? It's just that they're not going to mine it much anymore because the price is too low. Now that the price has come up, and then people are going to turn on the mining again and do it. But with the cost of oil and labor and all that kind of stuff and the scarcity of it, it's going to continue to climb historically. And there'll be periods where it outperforms all the other stocks. There'll be periods where it's a dog, like it's been for 4 or 5 years now, since 2020. Okay, so silver, it's using laptops, it's using silver nitrate, and creams, and healthcare, and treating burns, and cell phones, laundry detergents, right? Helicopters, jet engines, panels, solar panels like crazy, electric vehicles, air conditioning systems, Tomahawk missiles, right? Not that you want to hear that. 500 ounces in a Tomahawk missile. So it gets consumed and used. Just so you know, I'm not crazy, right? $3 million was the cost in 2007, and we've got like thousands of these things on our nuclear subs and on our big destroyers and other places, and every one of them used 500 ounces. I could give you a ton of stats that say, we produce this many million ounces of silver, but there are shortages in silver going forward. Copper, you saw that on Friday. By the way, one other thing, why that brought this particular miner, I did some research on it, right? This Zinjan mining group does massive amounts of copper, one of the largest copper producers. That's why its 3-month gain is just flown up, right, with copper hitting highs. I expect that to level off, but going forward, we're going to have massive copper shortages. So anyway, guys, that's enough. I'm tired. You guys are probably tired of me, so I'll say bye. And hopefully this helped you guys understand a lot more. So again, this is Bruce signing out. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. It's for fun and entertainment. Okay, bye.